Chapter 91, versus Holy Knights Part 2. Translator's Corner. A girl was walking through the street with a bright smile and a one-piece dress. She was going from clothing store to clothing store trying to find what she liked. "What do you think about this one? No good? Then how about this one?" she asked her friend. "Did the doctor let me out? Oh, well, I am perfectly all right now. Besides, listen. He invited me to a party. He said all his friends will be there and he wanted me to go with him. I have to pick out the best dress." She tried on numerous dresses, pouting that none fit her tastes. "You think that blue one would be good? Okay, 1 second." She tried on a blue evening dress which revealed her thigh. Though it was long, due to the design it was relatively easy to move in. She approached the cash register and handed the cashier a card. "I would need to see an identification." The girl sighed, reached into her wallet, and pulled out a new passport. "Miss Odaiko? I apologize for that. Would you like the dress packed or mailed?" "Yes, the doctor bribed a few government offices to have Yoko registered under his name. Her past erased, the doctor wanted to give the girl a new future. One where he controlled her as a toy." The girl picked up the dress and headed out of the shop. She was getting ready for what she was sure would be the best night in her life. Note, denote thought communication. Spoken word. Saint-Demon Confrontation Arc. 091. Versus Holy Knights Part 2. At the same time as Arno abandoned himself to a desperate struggle, every other Division 2 abandoned any hopes of being able to set up a barrier. For example, let's see how one squad fared. Auburn-haired team captain Grenda. Her squad was smoothly setting up the barrier. And suddenly they saw a single young lad walking towards them. He was strolling in their direction, his blue hair parted by 2 horns. These horns signified him as a non-human being. Grenda clicked her tongue, left the setting up of the barrier to her adjutant, and readied a squad to engage. "Are you also this city's denizen?" Though it was obvious, she asked in order to buy some time. And though she didn't expect a response. "Correct. Let me give you a warning. Peacefully sit down and wait. If you do, no harm will come to you, you know? That's the best outcome for you lot," he said, completely looking down on them. Grenda snorted and rebuked the offer. "In the first place, you can't make a deal with a monster and there was only a single one before them. Though he seems like a high-ranked ogre he would hardly be a threat to them. Ogres tends to favor combat focusing on raw strength. They slaughter their enemies by wielding heavy weapons with their brute strength. Furthermore, these are also individuals who can protect themselves with incredibly tough muscles and high regenerative abilities. Ogres are an adventurer's natural enemies. But they are the Knights Templar. Not a group that could possibly lose against an ogre. They have never seen a knee-ranked ogre. The monster before has an appearance of a particularly weak ogre. But, he carries the air of dominance about him. Chances are, it's a named unique monster. Its confidence must come from the fact that it's among the strongest beings in the forest. If so, they needed to teach it the strength of the Templars. Like teaching a frog that has never left its birth swamp how wide the world is. So that it would never look down on them again. "Well, we will kill it here so it won't have that chance," Grenda thought, closing her eyes. "Attention. Single target. Danger rating A. 3 members, dispose of it." She had thought to wait until her subordinates set up the holy barrier, but there was only a single enemy. It didn't release a powerful aura, so its danger rating was rated low. That rating, however, decided Grenda's squad's fate. "You are being careless. Aren't you looking down on your enemy too much?" As soon as the 3 knights approached the lad, the scene turned hazy for a split second. And, passing right through the knights, the lad continued the leisurely stroll. Why did he pass the knights? No, the knights have already collapsed. The moment they were in range he had completely immobilized them. These three powerful knights were rendered defenseless. In a single moment. What did you do? You bastard! What are you? She heard her adjutants cry out, and an intense feeling of déjà vu assaulted her. She was remembering what Commander Hinata has said so many times. And the enemy before her emitted strength that could make you despair. At this point, she understood the meaning of Hinata's warning. But, it was far too late. Shadows creeping from behind her have already disabled her entire team. Completely expressionless, a group of lads with identical face disabled them and disappeared. It seems that he had cloned himself and encircled the enemy from the very beginning. Just like Hinata, the moment he warned them the battle had been decided. He did not look down on them at all but prioritized results. Grenda lost. I could tell you my name, but it's a pain. I have a reason to keep you alive. Tell me everything you know about the church. I'm currently studying torture, so if you don't answer I'll be experimenting on you. Of course, feel free to resist. Now then, what will you do? I don't care either way. The lad muttered, completely uninterested, his expression unchanging. Coupled with his beautiful face, the scene filled Grenda's heart with fear. Resistance is futile. If so, will she choose to talk or to die? Then she noticed that he had left all her friends alive. Maybe, if she were to choose death he would offer the same to every one of them. Thinking that, she decided to buy some time by choosing to be tortured. Torture me or whatever you wish. We shall never bow before a monster. Grenda said as if she were giving up. She drew her blade and filled it with spiritual energy. While thus awakening her spiritual weapon, she confronted the enemy. Even if her strength wasn't enough, she would at least satisfy her pride. The blue-black-haired beautiful lad, Sai, looked at her with a slightly displeased expression. And sighed at her foolishness. I see, you chose to resist. I care little about ranks and such, so I'd rather you just tell me whatever you know. Faster than he could complete the sentence, Grenda moved. Her sword quickly pierced the body before her. But, perhaps she cut only a clone because the enemy simply faded away. Grenda understood. If she couldn't find his true body, she had no hopes of victory. Now then, let's begin the torture. Let me know when you decide to talk. A sweet voice whispered into her ear. Grenda intended to fight but Sai did not consider her as a being that could hurt him at all. And suddenly, Grenda felt waves of pleasure overcome her. Sai had begun to stimulate her erogenous nerves with a thread. Rather than pain, a heavenly pleasure attacked her. Now then, I have sealed your ability to faint. So do talk before you go mad. Grenda struggled inside this hell of pleasure. But, unfortunately, she soon gave up. As if threatened off the battlefield by Shin, Gabata and Gabal headed towards a small group of knights. At some point Hikaru was running beside them and Sai's shadow squad had joined. Don't hold us back, dearest brother. Who asked you to come? And you should make sure you don't hinder me. That was Gabal's and Tsuka's exchange. Though they always seem hostile, everyone knows they actually treasure each other. Only they themselves don't notice it. And after this exchange they had finally reached their destination. The knights too felt a group of monsters approaching them and finished their preparations. They filled their weapons with spiritual power and were thus fully armed. Beware. Those monsters don't seem like small fry. By Captain, there's 6 dragonettes among them? And those monsters that aren't wearing armor are ogres, right? No, though it's hard to believe, those are not ogres. They are the Faruna. Unlike ogres that depend on raw strength, these unique beings utilize special abilities. Oh, sounds annoying. But their dragonette vanguard also seems to have unusual air about him. The knights discussed. The approaching monsters were surely the main force of the monster country. The captain clicked his tongue in annoyance. But, even if they abandoned constructing the barrier here, surely another site would succeed. That just proves how well Hinata has read their plan. It's a good thing that their main force had come here. All right. I will defeat those large dragonettes. You two defeat the Una. The other 5 deal with the other 5 dragonettes. Understood. Wait, didn't you forget about that hobgoblin? Captain Gregory gave the inquirer an incredulous look, and tch. So what that I overlooked some small fry. I'll deal with him in a single moment later, he said, and the knights nodded in response. They knew the captain's power. The likes of hobgoblins would not even be able to land a single hit on him. But why is the hobgoblin included with the rest of them? A few of them thought, suspicion growing. Not a single monster introduced themselves. Nor did they intend to allow them to do so. Drop dead, you hindrance. Ha'ayojkazan hiking spirit beheading. Swinging his halberd, he fired a powerful shockwave at the monsters. The energy that escaped Templar Gregory's body intended to annihilate the monsters in a single striker. In addition to that, he fired the holy cannon from his hand, the bullets spiraling around the halberd's attack. The energy from the halberd and the bullet combined into a single energy bolt. This Yojkazan was Gregory's secret anti-monster certain kill technique. This shockwave pressed on in a straight line as if light itself, right in the direction of Gibel and Suka, who had already avoided the attack. As for the remaining Gabita and Hikaru, Hikaru had jumped onto the trees and moved via branches towards the knights. So only Gabita remained. When? Seriously, Sue? The path was exceedingly narrow, so only someone with Hikaru's agility could avoid the attack. For Gregory, as long taking out 2 or 3 enemies with this attack would have been ideal, but he would be satisfied as long as he killed that small fry. And thus, completely forgetting about the hobgoblin, he diverted his attention to the dragonettes approaching from the sky. Thus began this battle. The one in most danger was Gabita. Anyone and everyone that could have saved him have gone on ahead. Seriously, what a joke, Sue. How cruel to leave this frail me behind, Sue. Gabita grumbled, preparing for an attack. Unlike the ridiculous department heads, there was little he could do. Nor did he want to be treated the same as them. Excuse me, Wisdom King Raphael-san. It's an emergency, Sue. What should I do? Solution. If you, individual, Gabita, get hit by that, you will perish. You should unite with the Star Wolf, slip into the shadow, and attack the enemy from behind. Understood, Sue. Thanks for always saving me, Sue. Surprisingly enough, as long as a thought link was established, Gabita could communicate with Raphael. And, using Raphael's calculations, Gabita immediately sprung into action. After uniting with the Star Wolf and diving into the shadows, he was able to avoid the shockwave. And in this state he continued to move. He felt a great increase in his abilities and his raw strength at least double. Without doubting Raphael's calculations at all, Gabita sneaked behind the knight who had attacked him. He was completely oblivious to the fact that this enemy was the squad captain and one of the more powerful opponents. In fact, he blindly obeyed the Wisdom King's directions. Knight Templar Gregory by no means let his guard down. That is why he was able to respond to that presence. When he felt a monster suddenly appear behind him, he rolled forward to escape that place. Moreover, he was able to dodge the attack of the wolf's fangs coming at him from behind, and even launch a counterattack with his halberd. Gregory was surprised that the hobgoblin whom he had written off as dead a second ago had come out unscathed and attacked him. But, on this field of battle, he quickly recovered and focused on the opponent. The thought that he had underestimated his enemy was now gone from his mind, and he deemed the one before him a worthy foe. Gabita and Gregory. Without losing or letting each other gain a single inch, a violent battle erupted between the two. Since he traveled via the shadow, Gabita appeared amidst the enemy faster than anyone else. This surprised not only the knights but Gibel and the rest as well. Shadow step, huh? How disgraceful. To think he could use the shadows better than we could. No, Gabita-chan is amazing. Yeah. He's stronger than us, you know? Tuka and Suka responded to Suka's complaint. Though she had never heard anyone describe Gobita as strong until now, she knew he was not weak. Truly, the monster country Tempest simply had too many strong individuals. The extent of her master-size power she could not even fathom. She could hardly be surprised by him. Right, I guess we also need to show off our powers a bit, she said, and took to the skies in order to fight off the soldiers who advancing towards Gobita, thus effectively crippling their communications. Suka's group was thus able to fight the knights one-on-one. Gabul immediately set off to overwhelm the two adjutants. As Gregory's direct assistants, by no means were they weak. But their choice of weapon failed them this time. The weapon which was meant to cut off the opponent's magic energy just couldn't pierce Gabul's natural armor. Though these knights certainly had other skills to use, Gabul himself was a first-rate warrior. Blocking Gabul's spear, snapped their swords in half. Moreover, the knight's prided ability of using spirit magic without an incantation had no effect on him. So they couldn't gain an advantage by suddenly firing off magic at him. In short, they couldn't deal him any damage, and even the most pettiest of tricks throwing sand at his eyes wouldn't work due to magic perception ability. They were completely powerless. Gwahahaha. What's wrong? Is this all you can do? With this much you wouldn't last even an hour of Hikaru Dano's training session, Gabul said, while freely playing with the adjutants. From the very beginning, Gabul had a resistance to the holy attribute and paid little mind to their spirit magic archive. Besides, they were inferior in sword skill and other physical abilities. Thus, Gabul was a monster who could overwhelm two adjutant-class holy knights. Unable to accept the existence of such a monster, the adjutants decided to try to buy some time. As long as they could hold out until Gregory would cut down the hobgoblin, it would be their victory. It seems that these men have long forgotten about the fair Una who was no longer in sight. The rest of the squad too, though called a force that could crush 1,000 enemies by themselves, were barely able to hold back the dragonettes. And thus the battle continued, with every group resisting their respective opponents. There was someone who overlooked this battle from the treetops. Hikaru. While looking at this scene, HMPH. Gabul is having too much fun. Suka's group was able to find good opponents. If a battle is too easy, it doesn't teach you anything. Thank goodness they were able to find good opponents. Practice cannot teach one to feel danger, he muttered, observing their battles. Of course, should any one of them had wound up in trouble, he intended to support them right away, but that was clearly unnecessary. Gobita, you bastard, if you can do that much, why were you running away then? But I guess he's doing his best now. 'Tis all the guidance of our wisdom King Raphael-sama, he said with a satisfied nod. Everything was going according to plan. Wenshin suggested they stage a fight with similar ranked people, though it was completely idiotic. Hikaru and Raphael decided to turn it into training. Though Hikaru could see Ben and Maru finding out about this arrangement later and demanding that they do the fight over. Truly, he hoped that Shin would learn the fear of pain. No, it's probably useless even if she gets hurt, he muttered and sighed. Now then, with regards to the plan. Using the Thon link he could communicate with the Wisdom King. Chances are, it was Raphael who had decided what abilities would be given to them. After having decided what kind of servants would most benefit their common lord Rimuru. At the present moment, without any doubt or suspicion, they fully depended on Raphael's advice. Though Raphael often saw no need to reply, this time Raphael did. And this carefully designed battle continued. With this, Gobita and Suka's proficiency may increase. But Gabul's no good. He's having too much fun. When this is over, I'll work him to the bone. Hikaru muttered dissatisfied. But the pitiful Gabul did not know these things, and haughtily fought the knights. His fun times would continue a little longer. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 92, versus Holy Knights Part 3. White's Corner. Black. Hey White, are you ever going to do that Chapter 92 that Euro asked you to? Why? What do you mean? I'm doing it right now. Black. No you're not, I am. Why? Wait. What? Black. Yes. Why? Why is it that whenever you confuse me you just say yes? Black. Because you're never actually confused since I'm not? Gray. Black, you know it's too much for him if you play mind games. Black. But it's fun to play with it, dear White. Gray. True. Why? What are you guys saying? It's not like I liked you guys anyways. Jeez. Buckas. Scene. This chapter is brought to you by TL, Euro and Eisen. ED, White Samurai. Versus Holy Knights Part 3. Ranga was running through the battlefield. His body was light as if it were a feather. The sensation of being upon the earth gradually began to fade, and before he knew it, his body was already running in the sky. Naturally, the acquisition of the skill, 1, was a skill that could only be acquired by one who belonged to some of the highest ranks of magical beast. However, such things were no more than trifling matters to Ranga now. The wave of strength he now exuded gave him a certain feeling of delight. His body was now overflowing with power, as if his very energy was pulsating. His limbs, now covered with a jet-black fur, now had golden lightning pulsing through them. Demonic energy was seeping out like an electrical discharge. A large golden horn now grew on his forehead. On the left and right was the unchanged jet-black horns from his earlier form. The golden horn in the center was releasing rays of crystallized energy, pure energy it gave off continuously. As he gave off the dignity of a king. A majestic beast of noble presence that demanded the respect of his domain. The jet-black fur, that covered his majestic body, was clad in lightning. The deep black color, akin to darkness itself, was clad in a near divine radiance that fluttered delicately in the wind. However, in contrast to the gentle visage he possessed, the speed that he achieved while soaring in the sky had long since passed the speed of sound. But, only within Ranga's surroundings, the airspace retained its utter calmness as if nothing could disturb it. A space-based barrier that he used consciously. As Ranga vigorously soared through the sky, he caught sight of a group of holy knights positioned below him. Using Thought Link, he had already confirmed that there was no one else currently headed to that direction. Making a sharp nosedive, all the while killing his great momentum, he made his rapid advance towards the holy knights group. The Holy Knights squad commander Fritz steadily made progress on the necessary preparations. All according to Lady Hinata's plan. So far, there was not a single error in her judgment. There was nothing suspicious and, therefore, no problems whenever she took the lead. This time was no different. Although, he was still taking precautions, since it was never a bad idea to be cautious. It's only a group of monsters, even though these same monsters had proclaimed themselves to be a country, there was no need to take this as a major event. This was Fritz's opinion on the matter. However, Hinata had no use for the opinion of someone only at his level. It was only something natural to follow and make Lady Hinata's opinion his own as she was someone that he adored. It was for that reason that he made the various preparations, so that as soon as the signal from the other groups came through, his group would also be able to immediately begin. It was possible to invoke the barrier at any time. Then disaster itself came crashing from the sky. Fritz had never neglected his guard. He felt that the need for such an excessive strategy was exaggerating the threat of the situation, but he was still faithful and trusted Lady Hinata's orders. For this reason alone, it can be safely said that he and his companions were brimming to the rim with self-confidence. Not a single one of his companions were neglectful or slacked in their duties. Despite all of this, a single black lump came crashing from the sky to blow away one of his companions, a mighty holy knight. Even with that, there was no reason to be careless. This instantaneous event that sent a holy knight flying was not cause for panic. The proof for this reasoning was that the holy knight who had been blown away was still certainly alive. Of course, it would be a whole other story if he weren't, but since he was still alive, there was no need for excessive thoughts. Fritz gave his first order like lightning and took actions to carry it out. They had already erected the anti-magic barrier that covered not only every direction in the sky, but also underground, so they were sure their safety was certain. It was a standard defensive plan in case of surprise attack, to sense and defend against magical attacks. Furthermore, they also had set up the spirit barrier, a complex network of barriers that held multiple functions such as regulating temperatures or detoxifying airborne toxins. Holding faithfully on the standard plan of actions taught by Lady Hinata herself, Fritz had the outermost barriers established to detect the enemy so they would be able to conduct counterattacks immediately in the chance of a surprise attack. But, this was all in vain, for the enemy's attack this time was simply too fast. When the barrier perceived the attack and sent the warning about the encroaching monster, a holy knight had already been blown away. The extent of the barrier was nearly 2 kilometers from their position. To think that something could reach them before they had enough time to react was unthinkable. The purpose was to be able to detect the danger and react with long-distance attacks to weaken the target. This was standard procedure. Certainly, it won't react if an ally were to pass through it or touch it. Only when a monster that wasn't recognized by the barrier's settings. But it was certain that this monster had passed through these high-class barriers. The evidence of such was due to the very moment it arrived. At that very moment of its arrival, that monster had carelessly crashed into the outermost barriers, and in that instant, all of those high-class barriers were obliterated. There were some that had hypothesized that if there was enough energy involved, there was nothing that could pass through or resist a barrier. It was because these barriers were spread out at this very moment, that the holy knight that was attacked was spared near certain death. This was what emphasized the point that barriers aren't useless things. However, to be capable of breaking through several barriers, no, obliterating them instantly. Besides using a spirit armament, there was simply nothing that should be capable of doing such a thing. The monster that had suddenly crash-landed, using a holy knight as his landing pad, had begun walking calmly and advanced to the holy knight it had blown away. Fritz's eyes opened widely as his gaze locked onto the monster in his presence. All he could do was to wait for an opening. His aim was to wait for the right opportunity to rescue his companion somehow. However, this large, black wolf emitted such a terrifying density of coercion. Fritz couldn't find any opening at all. This was the same monster that cleared 2 kilometers faster than a holy knight could react to. This same monster was now within mere meters of them. Its limbs were clad with golden lightning and possessed a magnificent horn that none of them had ever seen before. A holy knight who was equipped with spirit arms and was cloaked in their spiritual power from the beginning, and surrounded with various barriers, had been incapacitated from just one hit. Just the mentioning of this alone could be called a terrific, yet horrifying action. Fritz wanted to reject it from his core, but he had to come to the conclusion that the monster in his presence was an obvious disaster-class monster. Now it is no longer a situation to be concerned about fallen companions. A single mistake would surely end with the entire group's complete annihilation. All hands, battle formation. Abandon the barrier. Strike high T with your full power. Like this, Fritz shouted out his battle order with frightening precision. Lady Hinata's prediction once again was proven to be completely accurate. When he made this realization, even in a situation that could be called a crisis, he felt a certain joy. As expected from Lady Hinata-sama, she had predicted this situation from the beginning. On Fritz's face sprouted a small smile, of course without neglecting his guard towards the might monster in his presence. Like this, he continued to instruct the battle formation using eye movements and minor gestures. A skilled holy knight, without overlooking a single gesture, were capable of promptly assuming the battle formation to exterminate a demon. The members of Fritz's group immediately regained their composure with the help of one of the party's magic, thought acceleration. As they rapidly made out their battle preparations, they continued to observe the target before them. But, then something unthinkable broke the tension of the battle. "What are you doing? Quickly now, go and heal that injured person." Ranga. Using its forelimb, the demon wolf tossed the blown-away holy knight over to their formation. For a moment, Fritz's composure was confused. He had already made his resolve to abandon injured or slain companions, but this monster had just given the wounded holy knight right to them instead of finishing him off. It was an action that Fritz couldn't understand. "Oi! Quickly now, if you don't do something pretty quick, he might die, you know." Ranga. The demon wolf, clad in majestic golden lightning, seemed to have concern for his companion's life for some reason and had uttered these words. His deep, baritone voice was very frightening. "Vice Commander Rama requires treatment, everyone else, follow me." Fritz. Fritz quickly returned to reality and let out his voice to give orders to the other group members. Kicking the ground in order to force his body, that was still confused, into action. Even though he had no idea as to what the aim of this terrifying monster was, he could at least fight without worry. Putting all of his strength into his elemental sword, Spirit Sword, he offered his prayer to the Divine Spirit. The energy in the atmosphere began to wrap around the sword blade and the sword itself began to radiate with light. Wrapped in the Spirit's ambience, the whole sword began to emit a pale light. "I don't know what you're trying to do, but don't you dare underestimate us, you monster. Eat this, Dispersal Sword, too. Anon Holy Knight 1/Fritz. I offer you my prayer, please seize the enemy with your divine might. Earth Jail, Great Gravity Prison, 3. Anon Holy Knight 2. Oh, the Blazing Flame Prison, burn my enemy into nothingness. Hellfire, Blazing Prism Sphere, 4. Anon Holy Knight 3. Oh, chilling ice and snow, clad my enemy in your mighty snowstorm and freeze them. Icy Blizzard, 5. Anon Holy Knight 4. O blowing wind that passes through all things, become my blade. Windblade, Wind Cutter, 6. Anon Holy Knight 5. The other vice commander, Gerard, held his breath as he watched the simultaneous attacks of the other holy knights. He stood back to protect and aid his recovering companion. While filled with the resolve to not become a hindrance, he continued to observe the demon wolf situation. It was then that he was astonished beyond his capability for reason. The demon wolf, before his own 2 eyes, had received all of the attacks, all the while wagging his tail happily. Fritz's dispersal sword can cut through anything and everything. From the tip of the sword, the divine protection of 4 attribute spirits was blended with an intense fighting spirit, the edge releasing the full accumulated power of each. It was a special sword technique designed for a long-ranged attack. Though it couldn't be compared with our nose, Fritz could certainly use the skill because he was loved by the spirits. Since the structure was fairly simple, it was difficult to predict the energy released from the attack just by observing the technique's execution. It was an attack that simply wouldn't give any chance for evasion, and could cut through any cornered enemy. The demon wolf, however, didn't attempt to do anything and just received the attacks, then extinguished them all with a flick of its jet black fur, something beyond what any of them could imagine occurring before now. Fritz's special attack had also been supported with the earth attributes which increased the gravitational force in the targeted place. The purpose of such magic was to prevent the monster from moving, though, since the monster had no intention of moving in the first place, such efforts were meaningless. To completely burn the cut body, and to prevent the enemy from regenerating, hellfire magic was used. But there wasn't a chance that such flames could burn this monster's fur. The blizzard was to prevent the enemy from escaping, and the wind blade was prepared to attack if an attempt to escape was made. Every move was completely ineffective from even damaging a single follicle of its fur. There were no words to describe this spectacle other than one: nightmare. Even if this monster stood as an Elite A or A+ ranked monster, to come out unscathed by such a string of coordinated attacks could only be said to be something close to impossible. When you damned monster! The other holy knights could only exclaim their utter disbelief. Even their vice-commander Gerard held the same opinion. The demon wolf continued to stand where it had been, calmly, just as if it had not received an attack at all. Why, you? What the hell are you? Even for the elite demons of the Fang Wolf race, such a unique monster. No beast such as you shouldn't ever exist. Fritz, aka a non-holy knight 1. Fritz could no longer endure and had begun shouting. As one of the commanders of the Holy Knight Squadron, Fritz has extensive battle experience against various groups of monsters. In his youth, he had fought against many elites from the Fang Wolf race. However, this demon wolf before his very eyes was outlandish no matter how you could describe it. Clearly, it had enough power to make it akin to a demon lord. Such a creature, was it originally a guardian deity that was enshrined in this area? Or perhaps, was it an unrecognized demon beast king who spread calamity in its wake? Nevertheless, neither he, nor any of the other holy knights knew the answer either. The group who put the protection of the entire world on their shoulders were dumbfounded. Fumu, little humans, my name is Ranga. This noble and mighty name was granted upon me by the great and wise Rimuru-sama. For the likes of you, I will permit the uttering of this name as a true blessing, be thankful. I am a member of the Star Wolf race. I, however, am unique. I am Ranga, the Fenrir, Star Nova Demon Wolf King, 7, Ranga. I am the one who shall crush, and annihilate all of Rimuru-sama's enemies. The monster declared it while facing Fritz and his compatriots, all in its deep baritone voice. What it had just said was clearly a threat. A being that gave death to anyone who would oppose it. Without even being able to wipe away his now gushing sweat, Fritz was frozen where he stood. Thinking about his current condition as calmly as he was capable, to defeat this monster, there was no other option than to weaken it with the sealing power of the holy field. However, to even enclose this monster, who boasts such an overwhelming speed, it was not going to be a simple matter. After all, if everyone were to set out alone to accomplish such a thing, this beast Ranga would simply wipe them out one by one. Since the very beginning of this engagement, they had already been in checkmate. Desperately, Fritz turned his mind, trying to find some way to turn the tables on this overwhelming being. Even with the supporting magic of thought acceleration, to find such a method as to allow them to defeat such a foe could not be found. No matter how long one were to look for it. Certainly not in such a dire situation as this one. However, his eyes were dazzled by a blinding flash followed immediately by a thunderous roar that sounded from behind his position. The vice-commander, Gerard, had attempted to make a slight movement. This, however, was instantly responded to with a blast of plasma. It was accurately aimed at the ground near Gerard's feet, causing him to instantly stop moving. In any case, Fritz wasn't sure of just how high the temperature of such an attack was, but the ground near Gerard's feet was melted and turned to glass. The heated air created a pulse of boiling hot air, as well as causing serious mental strain. As such, Gerard stopped moving foolishly. Even if they were the mighty holy knights, up until now they had never encountered such a powerful monster such as this one. Their once overflowing confidence had now been shattered. Despair wreaked havoc on the minds of Fritz's group. Even if they had their mighty spirit equipment as protection, there was no way to resist an attack akin to that bolt of plasma which was capable of turning the ground into glass. Moreover, to even evade an attack which was akin to lightning, even an expert holy knight would not be capable of such things. The defensive barrier and spirit equipment was the subject of their unwavering trust. They were certain there were no foes within the monster city capable of resisting such mighty existences. Even if they had to meet their deaths here, they could not afford to surrender to this monster. Sorry, you guys weren't lucky. It seems we ended up getting the most troublesome fellow here. Fritz. Fritz's words were mixed with resignation. Commander, I suppose we'll just have to hope next time we'll be luckier. A non-holy knight too. That's right. Besides, we always end up receiving the short straws. A non-holy knight 3. So what does it matter, we'll just manage this one and return back just as always. A non-holy knight 4. Each of the holy knights began cracking jokes. To each of them, they already understood a clear fact. Not one of them were getting out of this alive. Even so, for the sake of their honor, their pride as a holy knight, they would certainly slay it. All right, you cocky fellows. If we make it out of this, I'm treating you guys to drinks for a whole month. It's in order, everyone, let's make it out of here alive. Let's go. Fritz. Fritz shouted out, and began to run with the full resolution to throw his life away. Those who had been taken out early on had finally been rejuvenated. Along with Fritz, the other 7 holy knights began to advance simultaneously. Just like in training, no, even more than that. Their movements far exceeded their norm, born out of the desperation to not fall short for the sake of their comrades. They brought forth a strength they had never had before. In perfect clarity of mind and spirit, they performed a complex maneuver with ease. With this, the holy knights executed their desperate assault on Ranga at once. Then, darkness came. Feeling his consciousness faintly return, a sense of pain began to shoot through his entire body. A groan was let out and Fritz woke up. To even think of fainting with the sheer level of pain he was experiencing was difficult. However. Wait a minute? I'm conscious? So, I'm still alive? But, if I'm here, wasn't I defeated? Immediately after collecting his senses, Fritz began to take in his surroundings. Thereupon, noticing the windstorm whirling with such strength to be akin to a tornado that was carving the earth with its might, he was certainly glad to be alive. Just as he thought this, he thought of his companions. While uttering a silent prayer that they was still alive, he began to search for any signs of them. In his vision, he came across his defeated companions. They were all scattered around as if they had been struck by the winds. Fritz made an effort to get up, but there was no strength within his body. So, he somehow used all the energy he had to crawl and close the distance between the nearest person. That person was Vice Commander Lama, who was fortunately also still alive. Filled with a bottomless joy, Fritz had already forgotten about the intense pain he was experiencing. Like that, just as Fritz had confirmed the survival of each of his compatriots, a certain voice announced the ushering of true despair. Humans, we shall continue our match after you have made your recovery. I am yet satisfied with our fight after my great rebirth. Look upon me here, I have brought full potion, complete recovery medicine. I do believe these will be more than enough. Now then, hurry and recover, shall we enjoy this more? It said with such a cheerful tone as its tail wagged back and forth happily. Like a demon, no, this demon wolf spoke words just as if he were a demon himself. Hearing those words, Fritz's consciousness was devoured by a great and unending despair. It may have been more fortunate if I had just fainted earlier. Fritz's mind became more and more despondent as he thought on his situation. Of course, such a happy ending to his story would not happen now. 1 equals Hishusu. 2 equals Hizankan. 3 equals Daijuri Ikugoku, Asujiru. 4 equals Gaku and Dama, Harufei Aya. 5 equals Kurafubuki, Burizedo. 6 equals Keisetsuki, Indaburido. 7 equals Hashio Umekamiu, Fennerer. Who, actually mean destroy/collapse/crumble, but because a star-destroying process is nova, I use nova. From now on I going to use elemental magic rather than chemical elemental. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible.